Aloha and welcome to this practice WOD called Digits Part 5. Digits Part 5 is very similar to Digits Part 4. Instead of doing the Add Contact page, we're going to do the Edit Contact page. Most of it's the same, a little bit of it is different, but definitely you should feel very comfortable with Part 4 before you move on to this. So make sure you've done the Part 4 a couple of times before you do this one. Also, obviously, as I say, watch me do this before you try to do it yourself, because there's a lot of learning with this, and you might as well have a sense of what you want to try to do. No reason to fumble around. You'll do enough fumbling even after you've watched me. And make sure you've merged the branch containing the final version of your previous WOD into master, so that now you can start from master to do this one and just revert back to master when you try to do this one for the second time. Also, whenever you're switching branches, it has the potential to mess up Meteor because the database is going to kind of be pushed back and forth. So whenever you're switching branches, it's best to quit Meteor, do a Meteor reset to clear out the contents of the database, and then rerun it. And I'm suggesting you use the script in NPM, as I talked about last time. We're also going to need both Meteor example form and Meteor example template, as you'll see in this example. So you'll want both of those applications around. Okay, let's start the timer, which is not there, which turns out to not be anywhere. So let me go find it. Why it goes away, I do not know. Okay, here we go. And so we're going to create and switch to a branch called Edit Contact 1. So I'll bring up GitHub. And in digits, I'll say Edit Contact 1 from master. So I've created the branch. Let's get rid of that. And we're going to start by updating homepage.html. We're going to use the file liststuffpage.html from Meteor application template as an example. So let's go into Meteor application template, and in list stuff page, the key thing here is that if you look at the example, one of the columns in the page that lists the stuff is an edit column, and then there's a link in each of those which takes you to the edit page. So we're gonna use that same piece of code to do digits. So if we go to digits and then homepage.html, we can do this, and we'll do propeller D to duplicate, and then we'll call that the edit column. Of course, it's not going to be edit stuff page, it's going to be edit contact page. And it's not going to be stuff.id, it's going to be contact.id. Okay, and if we go back here, fix the edit contact route to bind the ID to underscore ID, not ID. So basically you can see here we have contact._ID that or the ID parameter within the router is going to be bound to the actual underscore ID of the document associated with this contact. Okay, so the href, let me just go through this a little bit more. So we have path4, which is a Meteor or flow router template helper that's globally registered that says I'm going to return from whatever you pass me, whatever's passed to path4, I'm going to construct the URL that would be a path to the page that you're talking about. Okay, and if we go into the router, what we can see is the edit contact page, and this is where I'm going to put the fix. The edit contact page consists of the global host and then /edit contact and then a slash, and this is kind of a parameter indicating that there is a value here which is going to be represented by a variable called underscore ID. So what we're going to do in home page is we're going to provide a value for that parameter, which will then appear in the URL returned by this entire expression. And the value of this parameter to the route, which is right here, okay, is going to be the underscore ID field of this contact document. And the underscore ID field, of this contact document is the doc ID, right? The unique ID which we can use to actually retrieve this document from the collection. Okay, so that's that. Let me save this out, and then I think probably the best thing to do at this point, yeah, is to just kind of look at what the resulting system looks like. Okay, so now we've got our home page, we've got an edit field, and then if you look down in the lower right hand corner, so look down here, and then I'll move my cursor over. If you look down here, you see localhost / edit context / and then this 14-digit string, which is the doc ID of this particular Philip Johnson. So we have this record right here, okay? And then we've just constructed a URL that's linked to that edit label, and that URL is localhost:3000 edit contact and then the doc ID that can be used to retrieve this data. Okay? So what we're going to do when we click this link, when it all works, we'll click this link, we're going to go to the edit page. The edit page is going to retrieve that doc ID off of the URL itself. Okay? And that's how it's going to know what data to look up, what data you're interested in, which is actually this specific data. Okay, so that's the paradigm. Let's go back and try to make it happen, all right? So now we're going to edit the update. We're going to update the edit contact page.html. So using the file edit student data page.html from Meteor example form, we're going to update edit contact page.html so that the form's HTML is appropriate for form submission. Please be sure to include the check that the subscription is ready, that the form includes the contact data form class, and that the value attribute is included. Okay, so that's a lot of text there. Let's see what that actually means. So we're going to first go to Meteor example form, and we're going to go to edit student page.html. Okay, and here's the things that we care about. The first thing is when we display this page, we need to have the database, the local mini Mongo, populated with the contacts, with the contents of the contacts collection. Okay, and that means that the subscription, when we retrieve this page, okay, so in the case of here, we're going to subscribe to student data, and that might take a little bit of time to happen. So we're asking, when you retrieve this page, go make sure that this subscription, the student data, you know, that the publication of that's called student data has actually run and transferred data about students over to the client, okay, over to the browser. That may take a little bit of time, and so what we want to do here is we want to say, don't display this page until such time as our subscriptions that we put in the onCreated helper, that they've all finished and they've got all their data from the server. Okay, and so that's why we do that. Okay, so let's start off by saying we're going to take that template, and then we're going to go to edit contact page. Okay, and then let's just put it right at the very top. So we're going to put if templates.subscriptions ready, and then /if, okay, and then we do propeller meta L to make sure our all our indentation is correct. Okay, so we've made sure the subscription is ready, and then let's go back over to Meteor example form, and then the second thing we notice is that we have this UI form success class, error class thing. Well, we're going to need that in our form specification, and as before, we don't care about specifying to Semantic UI that the form has succeeded, because we're going to go to another page right away anyway. On the other hand, we do need to tell Semantic UI when form validation has failed, so that it can go ahead and display all the bad stuff that's happened. Okay, now what I also want to note actually at this point is if we look at this, this turns out to be basically identical to the add contact page.html, okay, except we're going to have the value. We're going to have a value attribute for each of these forms. So what I'm actually going to do is, rather than try to edit our mock-up for the edit contact form to reproduce this, I'm just going to start with this, go to edit contact page, paste this, okay, and then note that I've got to now update with the value field. So we're going to go back to Meteor example form, and we're going to notice that this is the key attribute, because when we go to the edit page, we need to be actually in the form supplying the current values for that particular contact so that we know what we start with and we can edit it. So in order to do that, we're going to send to all of our controls, okay, what the value of the value attribute should be. So if you look at text form control, you can see there's a value attribute for the input element, and we're going to pass that value in. Okay, so going back to here, let's just cut and paste that. Edit student, I'm going to go back to digits. Okay, so I'll stick it, I guess I'll stick it right here. So we'll put that like that, put that like that, put that like that, that like that, and then that like that. Okay, so student data field is not defined, which is true because we don't have that helper function. I'll get rid of that. Okay, but we'll now we have to write a helper function or supply a helper function in our JavaScript that will provide the value, and actually I'm going to edit this right now, of the corresponding field. So we want to say something like this, email. Okay, so so this form, and then this should probably say update rather than submit. Okay, so it looks pretty much the way it did before, except we've got the subscriptions ready, and we've modified this just the same way we had it before, and then we provide the value field to each of our form controls, so we supply a value in there, and we're going to call it update rather than submit. So let's go back and see if we've done that. We've checked this subscription is ready, the form includes the contact data from class, and that the value attribute is included. Great. Okay, now we're going to update edit contact page.js, the corresponding JavaScript. And actually, this is very close to the add JavaScript, the add contact page JavaScript, and I'm just detailing for you the differences. We need that helper function to get the value of a field, which we pass into our template. We need to make sure we subscribe to the collection so that we have data to actually retrieve. And then we need to call an update handler rather than an insert handler. Okay, so let's do those things. And the way I'm going to approach it is, since I'm telling you that this is almost exactly what we need, I'm going to start by just basically doing a propeller A, propeller C to copy the contents of that, and then I go to edit contact page, which has nothing in it, and I paste it in. Okay, now first thing to know when we cut and paste, right, these things are all wrong. It should be edit contact page. So to fix that, I can do a propeller R, and I can say, instead of add contact page, I want to say edit contact page. This is, cutting and pasting is great in some ways, but you gotta be very careful to make sure that that you find all the things that need to be changed. Nevertheless, I mean, it's better than writing all this stuff from scratch. Okay, the second thing is we need to subscribe to, we need to subscribe to the context. So let's just take that. I went to the home page on created. I need to subscribe to my contacts publication. So I'm going to say, whoops, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say propeller C, and then edit contact page.js. I'm going to go to my onCreated function, and again do this subscribe. Now remember what we're trying to do. The way Meteor works, we need to replicate pieces of the server database inside the browser. Okay, that's the paradigm of Meteor, which is actually super cool. They do it through this publish subscribe model, where on the server side you indicate little pieces of the database that should be replicated to the client based on the page that's being displayed. And so we're saying in the case of the edit contact page, we need access to this little piece of the database, which is indicated by the publication named contacts. Okay, that's all that's saying. Because we've got to display data on this page, right? It's an edit page. We're going to display data from the database on this page, so we have to subscribe to make that data available to us. Okay, the next thing we need to do is from Meteor example form, we need to get that student data field. Okay, so let's copy that. And let's go to digits. And then we'll say student data field. And we've got to make a little bit of changes here. So this should be contacts dot find one. So what we're saying here, okay, which is really cool, is we're going to say, look, flow router, I'm at a page, and remember the URL to that page is /edit contact/ a doc ID. Okay? And so if we do this call here, we're saying to flow router, find me the value of the parameter in the URL denoted by this underscore ID. So it's going to, this call will return the doc ID that was associated with this page, and the doc ID we can pass to find one to obtain that document in our client-side mini Mongo for the data that we want to display. Okay, I think that's super sweet. So let's call this contact data. So I'm going to do a Shift F6 so I can rename that. Okay, and then there's a little bit of funniness. You'll get some error messages in your console because this has the possibility of returning a value before the subscription has actually run, and so find one won't return a good value. Eventually it'll get re-invoked and will have the right value. So actually in your page, everything will always look good, but in your console you might see some error messages. So you can read this URL to understand more about it, but the convention is if you do something like this to say only return a non-null value when contact data actually is only access this particular field that's being passed in when we actually have a truthy contact data value. If we just said this, okay, what can happen is sometimes contact data won't have a value or will have a null value because because the contact subscription hasn't completed yet, and so find one doesn't find a value, and then we try to access field name, but this is null, so we get an error in the console. But then this thing will rerun once contacts has been populated, and everything will go fine. So in order to prevent that console error from appearing, we just put this little guard in so that we don't attempt to do this field access until contact data actually has a value. That's what all that means. Okay, so there's student data field. We've subscribed. And the only other thing I think we need to do here, so we've had the helper function, we subscribe to the collection, and then we call update rather than insert. So if we go back to Meteor example form, what you can see is down here we are calling this update. So let's copy this whole line, go back to digits, and then let's just copy it in underneath. Okay, and so what we want to actually say is contacts update flow router. So the update says give me the doc ID of the record you want to have, or the document you want to update, and then give me the actual fields and values you want to update. That's how that call works. And so if we do this, everything is good, from ESLint's perspective, but I don't like this new contact data because it's not new, it's updated. So I'll do a Shift F6 and then say updated contact data, just to rename that variable every place. And I think that's good. Now there's one other thing I don't quite like. We're calling this student data field, and we're calling it here and in the edit contact page we say student data field, but it's really contact data field. So let's replace student data field by contact data field. So we'll replace all here, and then we also have to replace this contact data field. Okay, and so when we call this helper function in the template, then we're going to return the value associated with this field name, and then that will be passed into this value attribute of the text form control. Text form control will take that, put it right here, and now our text field should have the value that we want. Okay, so if we go here, let's see what we have here. We've got Meteor restarted, so we go to digits, and let's take Philip Johnson, and if we say edit, there's Philip Johnson. Let's try updating all his fields just by adding a 2. And let's see what happens. Update Philip Johnson 2, East West Road 2, 2, 2. Okay? So there we go. We've updated all our fields and redisplayed the database. So we did it. Okay? So let's commit our changes to GitHub. Finished edit page. And it looks like that's 21 minutes, we'll call it, which is a little bit of time, but certainly time well spent, right? Now you know how to edit pre-existing data, and once you've got this code down, you'll have some sample code you can use for your future projects whenever you need to update data from a form. All right.